workers who will now have to quarantine, should they be entitled to sick pay or some sort of compensation? Well, joining us now to discuss this is the founder of Pimlico Plumbers, Charlie Mullins, who says we should not be paying people sick pay to quarantine after a holiday. Good morning to you. And the TUC Head of Economics and Employment Rights, Kate Bell, who thinks people in quarantine should get sick pay. So, Charlie Mullins, let's start off with you in that case. What do you feel about this? Should people be entitled to some kind of sick pay, some kind of compensation, because this is a circumstance that they find themselves in, that the government has imposed these restrictions?
Yeah, well, no, of course we can't pay sick pay. I mean, it's going to cost another £98 a week per person, and it can go on for 28 weeks. And let's not kid anybody, they're not sick. They're aware of the circumstances when you set off, and the deal is when you come back, it's 14 days quarantine. So to start, draining more money from the government, I think it's going to be incorrect. I think it's just going to send the country more and more backwards. We need to stop draining the money off the government and start getting back into the workplace. So undoubtedly, no way. They're not sick. Sick pay means you're sick and they're not sick.
So even though if people find themselves in a situation, because, at one point the government was saying to go back to normal, people will have saved up hard, they would have booked these holidays, gone out there to France, might find themselves in a situation through no fault of their own then, when the government suddenly says, if you don't get back before 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, you're going to have to self-isolate. You don't think that there should be any compensation from the government to make up for that?
I think the government should monitor it better and make people more aware that, when this quarantine is going to come in and not just spring it on people. But at the end of the day, we're governed by the virus situation. And I think we just have to accept the fact now that if we go abroad, they can bring it in on any country. And I believe that you've just got to, accept that fact. It's not what we want to hear, but in the same token, I'm going to go back to what I'm saying. If you start paying people £100 a week to sit at home and do nothing, we're back to square one. The economy can't afford it. It's just sending out the wrong message.
Kate Bell, let's bring you in now. We've had a lot of tweets, and many of them aren't that sympathetic for the people who have chosen to go on holiday. Stuart on Twitter, I'm sorry, but I have no sympathy for these people who have to quarantine after coming back from a holiday during a pandemic. They must have known that there was a risk going on holiday during a pandemic. What happened to do this for your country? People should be quarantining so we don't have a second spike, and it's their fault that they've gone abroad.
Well, lots of people didn't know, of course, when they set off to France, that France was going to be put onto the quarantine list. Government's changed this advice when many people are still on holiday and can't get back in time. And the unfortunate thing is, many people just are going to face real financial hardship if they're asked to quarantine. Of course, lots of people can carry on working from home and the situation might be OK for them. But if you have to go out to work and government says, right, you're going to be on £95 a week, or for many people, actually, you're not going to get any sick pay at all, that's a really tough choice. Government's telling them they have to stay at home and they do have to provide some form of financial support.
But we did know, we knew that there was a pandemic across the world. We knew that there was a risk. You wouldn't have gone abroad not knowing that, because other countries were on the list that you couldn't go to. And I just often think about the older generation. My grandfather fought in the war. My grandmother was in the Land Army. They did things for their country. They did things to prevent things happening, and they didn't wait for a handout. And I mean, surely we need to be doing this collectively as a country to stop a second spike. And we should do it.
Trying absolutely to follow the advice and to stay at home. But it's really difficult to do that if you're facing a massive, massive drop in your income that's going to push you into debt. And that's the situation that many, many people coming home are now going to face. Everyone has tried really, really hard to do the right thing, but we are seeing the lack of a decent level of sick pay, putting people in a really tough situation where they're facing doing the right thing, as you say, which is what people want to do, or facing a pretty catastrophic loss of income. We've seen actually today the Royal Society, who represents scientists, coming out and saying the low level of sick pay in the UK is stopping our attempts to beat this pandemic, because it puts people in that really impossible choice with, going into debt, not being able to pay their bills and worrying about doing the right thing and staying at home, which is, of course, what people are trying to do.
And Charlie, that's a good point, isn't it? It's all very well for you with... Is that a swimming pool behind you? I mean, you've got lots of money. Yeah. You can do it, but other people are on the breadline, Charlie. They can't do this. They can't go without 2 weeks of work.
Yeah, the swimming pool was paid for out of hard work, not sitting at home doing nothing. So, you know, we keep saying that you know, we should be more sympathetic with people. But rightly, as you said, we clearly know that when we go abroad now, the quarantine situation may well come in. And if we can't surely expect to keep being paid, surely you can't expect the economy to keep bailing people out. People are not sick. They've gone on holiday. They know what the circumstances are, and the deal is that you sit at home for 14 days.
Charlie, what about those people who've saved up a long time, you know, who've booked this holiday in advance? They then find themselves in a situation where they're thinking, well, do I lose my holiday completely? Do I just chuck all that money away? You know, it's a really difficult financial decision for people to do that. They're going to lose a lot of money if they do it.
You are right there, but you know, if they've got a choice not to go on their holiday and they can get their money back, then maybe that's what they've got to do. But if we bring in sick pay for these circumstances, you're going to find that people are going to be less fussy where they go. They're going to take more risks, and we're going to have another nation of people going away because they can come back and get £100 a week to sit at home. I mean, where do you draw the line on it? Where do we come up with at some stage that we need to stand up and get the economy going and not keep draining off of it?
Charlie, yeah, all right, you may have a point, but that's speaking the real world here. People aren't following the quarantine guideline rules. Whether you say it's because they're selfish or whether they haven't got the money, people aren't doing it. And ultimately, what we need is not to have a second spike. That's the aim here. So we need to go about it in the best possible way. And if that means paying people, we need to do it.
Sean, tell me this. How will paying people sick pay stop the epidemic spreading?
Well, they will quarantine, Charlie. That's the point here.
You've got quarantine anyhow. You've got quarantine anyhow. So if they don't quarantine...
They're not quarantining. They're not quarantining because they can't afford it.
Well, you keep saying they can't afford it, but they can afford to go on holiday. I mean, look, you know, you either quarantine or you don't. And if the deal is to quarantine, that's what we've got to do. Giving people £100 a week, I don't think it's going to make any difference whether they're going to quarantine or not, surely. I mean, you're sending out the wrong message, Sean. You know,
do you see the point? It's not about the message. What I'm saying is it's not happening. So we need to do something to make it happen. Because when we have a second spike, if we do, then people will die and businesses will close. So that's the ultimate aim, isn't it?
Of course it is, but you can't blame the fact that you're not being paid sick pay that you don't do your quarantine. I mean, that's just a crazy thing. Look, they're not sick. They know the circumstances, and the deal is you stay indoors for 14 days. You can't expect to be paid for that. I mean, it's just crazy. What about all the self-employed people that don't get sick pay? What about the other people that will get sick pay and their employer's going to contribute to it and pay more? You know, people are just going to be entitled again. The deal is you go abroad, you come back, it's 14 days quarantine. Okay, surely we've got to accept that.
Let's have a quick word from Kate Bell to wrap this up there. Kate, obviously, you know, Charlie Mullins there, no sympathy for people who do choose to do this. What would you say to employers who have a situation where there is a member of staff who finds themselves having to self-isolate because of what's happened? You know, obviously, the current setup is they're not going to get compensation, but would you hope that they would be flexible about it, that there would be something that they could offer their staff to help make up for the fact that this has happened?
Absolutely. Well, many people, of course, have been able to work from home, and we'd hope that employers would show flexibility there. But if not, we do think they should be consider whether they can be paying them sick pay during this period, because for many people it's just unrealistic to say that you can survive on £96 a week or less than £96 a week or no pay at all. I think that's a real lack of contact with reality to suggest that people can just go without their wages for 2 weeks.
OK, Kate Bell and Charlie Mullins, thank you both for joining us this morning to chat through that.
Yes, thank you.